Oh my goodness. Joy! It is the news! How? God, why is this happening to me? Of all people, me! Cody! I'm a great guy. Good guy. I'm a guy who's never purposefully done harm to anyone. I've never killed anyone on purpose without a good reason. Listen. News! You like it? Then like and subscribe. You hate it? Still like and subscribe. And here's some news. Jared Kushner. God, of all the names I could have said, that guy, he's got the face of a man who would hunt you for sport. A walking sleep paralysis hallucination. Like if the Hat Man got into real estate. Remember when he used to be a big problem here in America? Now he's, Albania's problem, I guess? But also, and here's some more news, he is still our problem. Maybe he's not as present among the clown ocean that is the current administration, but he's still there, standing in the back, blending into the wallpaper like an upper-class spider, or a wasp, both meanings. It's easy to forget him. He's like the silence in Doctor Who, but somehow more unnerving. And he's just out there amongst us. He could be in your house right now. I really can't stress this enough. Jared Kushner is still our problem. If you or someone you know sees Jared Kushner, please contact the proper authorities who, unfortunately, might be working for Jared Kushner, because this spindly penis is currently an ambassador for the Trump administration, and negotiator on foreign affairs, and former senior staffer to the president, and the current special peace envoy, a new title that Trump invented just for him, and isn't technically associated with the United States government, which means that Jared could try to avoid disclosing any financial investments like any other official federal civil servant would have to do. Also, it comes with double prize money. But hey, no need to disclose your conflicts of interest. He's just an innocent business lamb who wants to selflessly use his foreign contacts and relationships to help us and his father-in-law president. And you know, maybe if the benefits go to him along the way, well, who's to say? A little profit splashback. Like if the store manager's son-in-law shows up to help out with your shift at Domino's, maybe they'll grab a free slice and also a few hundies from the register and also sell drugs in the bathroom. Maybe. We don't actually know. We're sort of guessing because President Trump, the president, presidently fired most of the inspectors general at the start of his second term. So no one is really around to see what Kush is up to and call out any conflicts of interest or, gasp, illegal dealings. Just one more messed up, scummy deed to throw on the heap. Stick it on there next to the president suing his own IRS and then settling with taxpayer money, I guess. Or maybe they aren't gonna do that anymore yet. See, it's hard to give a damn about this one wiener when there are so many more crimes done by much louder dummies. Kushner is just somehow both dull and insidious, like a severed torso with a Lego figure's soul inside. But that's, of course, one of his many powers, to remain on the DL while he very carefully carries out his own agenda. And he does have an agenda. And to understand it, we need to also understand where Jared Kushner came from. Specifically, from this guy's wang.
Since then, I look at life as a balance sheet. And many of us have assets, many of us have liabilities. And I've have liabilities for sure, and the mistake I made in the past is one of my many liabilities.
That's Charles Kushner, OG Kush, Jared's dad and current ambassador to France. Gee, I wonder how he got that gig. Is he any good at it? Nope. Turns out he's so bad at it that he got banned from speaking to French officials after not showing up to a summons from that country. France called that a, quote, misunderstanding of the basic expectations of an ambassador. No shit. I feel like the number one thing an ambassador needs to do is not get banned from speaking with the country to which they are an ambassador. What a reverse Nepo baby. Of course, Jared was just returning the favor. It's a two-generation Nepo baby family. Specifically, a prominent New York real estate family much like Trump's. Jared's grandparents were Holocaust survivors who immigrated to the US after World War II. His grandfather, Joe, gained significant wealth as a contractor, benefiting from the post-war housing boom in New York and New Jersey. Future Ambassador Charles took over Grandpa Joe's real estate business in the 1980s. Not too long after a certain 45th/47th president took over from his wealthy real estate dad. Charles used his money as primarily a Democratic political donor bucket for Clinton, Gordh, and New Jersey Governor James McGreevey, among others. In 2001, these connections helped Charles Kushner become appointed chairman of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Now, you may have noticed in that clip I showed, he seemed to be alluding to some kind of sordid past. Here he is again, doing that again.
I am not a perfect person. I made a very, very, very serious mistake, and I paid a very heavy price for that mistake.
See? He's sorry for whatever that was. So back in 2004, Charles pleaded guilty to 16 counts of filing false tax returns, 1 count of making false statements to the Federal Election Commission, and a weird Rube Goldbergian honeypot scheme to hire a sex worker to seduce his brother-in-law in retaliation for his sister and brother allegedly cooperating with the feds. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison, but only served 14 months because rich. I should probably explain what I just said. 2 years prior to this, Charles and his brother Murray, Jared's uncle, were in the midst of a civil suit in which Murray accused Charles of violating campaign finance law by making political donations under the names of family members, misusing corporate funds for personal expenses like basketball tickets, booze, and paying a consulting firm to see if a political comeback was possible for Benjamin Netanyahu, who at the time was on a brief break from politics. Also, yes, Charles knew Netanyahu, more on that in a sec. A lot of layers here. So Chuck's paranoia during this family civil suit led him to believe Murray and their sister were both secretly working with the then U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, Chris Christie. Yes, he's also in this story. It's like the Star Wars prequels. They're all just hanging out together. I know you and you. You've seen them. Long story short, Charles hired a sex worker to seduce his sister's husband and hired a private investigator to videotape and take photos of the encounter, using the footage to attempt to blackmail his siblings. The scheme, which I assume he saw in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, was stupid, backfired, and added a charge of witness tampering to Christie's case against Charles. So this is Jared's dad, a dumb crime guy, and our current ambassador to France, even though it's not allowed to talk to people in France or whatever. What least of our worries is what France thinks of us, okay? Their big landmark is scaffolding. Cool scaffolding. Maybe build something with it. I don't know why I'm mad at France suddenly. The point is, this obviously screwed little Jared up, right? In fact, Chris Christie claims that Jared felt a lot of resentment, not toward his father, but toward the people who ratted on him. Charles Kushner, an 80s real estate nepo baby who loved to do stupid crime. Oh, and might I add, oh. And then, of course, there's that Netanyahu fellow. As I mentioned, Charles Kushner spent a lot of money and time on Israeli politics. And so the Kushner family has been highly connected to Big Ben. How close, you ask? Well, Netanyahu once crashed in Jared's childhood bedroom while he slept in the basement, which feels like some kind of metaphor, actually. They were tight, is my point. When the Israeli media found a list of wealthy Americans most likely to fund his primary election, Charles Kushner was near the top. Oh, and look, there's Trump there too. That's neat. And so Jared's educational curriculum and school events were often intertwined with the state of Israel, with some of his teachers telling him and his fellow students that Palestinian was a made-up identity created for political reasons. He was a fancy little rich boy with access to powerful people, being fed propaganda, and gaining an early resentment of anyone holding his family accountable for crimes. What a combination of things. He would go on to be an average student before getting accepted into Harvard, a college to which his father coincidentally donated $2.5 million. Man, I don't like rich people. So this is all setting up Jared's final form. A very obvious origin story that whittled him down into a very fine point. Like, obviously physically he's a pencil-neck pinhead, but I mean mostly metaphorically, because Jared clearly had a goal in mind pretty early on. Shortly after his dad went behind bars, he took over the family real estate empire and sold almost all of its suburban holdings, focusing his attention on Manhattan. He also bought the New York Observer, a tabloid known for shit-stirring the world of real estate and finance. Think of it like a combination of Forbes and the Weekly World News for elites. And this was obviously a strategic purchase. Jared used the Observer as a shield for his allies and a sword against his critics. After seeing his dad being called out for crimes in the newspapers, he realized that a very simple solution to that was to just buy his own. That's what rich people do, after all. Jared learned the complete wrong lesson from his father's misdeeds. He saw a criminal do a crime and was like, well, the obvious problem is all the people noticing the crime. So Kushner was playing a small-scale version of Charles Foster Kane, Rupert Murdoch, Robert Duvall as Joseph Pulitzer, using the Observer to boost his status and promote Manhattan real estate deals while collecting rent money from tens of thousands of low-cost apartments along the East Coast and the Midwest. He was a slumlord, a shitty real estate villain who used his own personal newspaper to hype himself up. It's only natural that he ended up at the same parties as the Trump family. Now, reportedly, Trump didn't actually like Kushner at first, probably because he's the human equivalent of a hearse, but nevertheless, Jared and Ivanka got hitched. Perhaps to win his father-in-law's favor, a few years later, Jared ran a hit piece in the New York Observer on New York Attorney General Erik Schneiderman, who was pursuing a case against the fake college Trump University at the time. Of course, he wanted to help his new crime daddy. That's where the origin story leads. Jared Kushner bounced from one crime father to another. I have no data to back this up, but that's probably part of the reason why he married Ivanka. They also share a lot of the same fetishes. Which fetishes? Who can say? But dark fetishes for sure. So, you can't say they aren't happy. It's like Wilson Fisk and Vanessa. I want what they have. Let's go to an ad break, and when we come back, we will talk about Kushner's role in the Trump administration. Was it good? Did we like it? Only one way to know how you felt about that, which is keep watching after the ads. Father's Day is right around the just happened, and the last thing your dad needs is another gag gift. An inflatable belt, a tie that plays slow jazz, a 15-year-old frozen Baconator. Time to get him something for next Father's Day, or just for funsies that he'll really appreciate, like a Tushy bidet. It's a cinch to install and gets me way cleaner than toilet paper, with added comfort to boot. It's the perfect gift for the TP overuser in your life. Way better than a toaster with Mickey Rourke's face on it, or a live rooster. And Tushy e-bidets come with a heated seat, adjustable water temperature, and a powerful yet gentle dryer. Hands-free, baby! Your pops is gonna love that on Guy Fawkes Day or whatever's next. And don't worry, every Hello Tushy bidet comes with a 30-day hassle-free return and 12-month warranty. So if your dad is a real freak for the paper, just loves this stuff, wants to carry it around with him in one of the 15 Ace Hardware bags you gave him for Father's Day, then it's no problem whatsoever. You just wanted to share the freshwater wealth, so stop guessing you're clean. Start feeling it. For a limited time, our audience gets 10% off your first bidet order when you use code SMN at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with promo code SMN. That'll save you some simoleons to give your dad a bucket of unsealed chum. hellotushy.com, promo code SMN. Hello, as the redcoats say. We beat 'em! Happy almost 4th, folks. 4th, May the 4th be the date in July that I'm referring to. Jared Kushner. He's our guy, the Babadook's conservative cousin, a haunting little unadorned coat rack of a man, married to the boss's daughter, doing wild stuff together. Blood play, milking table, garbage disposals, who can say? During Trump's first term, America was forced to learn that he existed. Jared initially jumped into his father-in-law's campaign as a top advisor. After all, with Jared acquiring his own tabloid, he had experience spinning narratives. Although even his own newspaper had trouble spinning how blatantly racist his father-in-law was while campaigning, because sometimes you just can't polish a turd no matter how much you spit on it. Oh my gosh, maybe that's the fetish. Maybe they like get together and spit on turds and polish them. Anyway, adorably, at the time, people were concerned about how blatantly corrupt it is to stick your inexperienced son-in-law into an official government position. Remember when things mattered? Remember when people were like questioning things? And at the time, there was a lot of concern over this white bread wraith, this rizless loafer of a man, somehow being propped up and even used as a mouthpiece for Trump's administration. Why was this human brick of rice tasked with being the liaison to multiple countries? What could this arid wad possibly know about the opioid crisis or creating peace in the Middle East? But of course, the Kush would stick it out. Much like purchasing the New York Observer, Jared clearly saw this as an opportunity to attack his enemies and protect his allies. In fact, one of Kushner's first missions was to get rid of then Trump advisor Chris Christie. You know, the guy who threw Jared's dad in prison.
The day that Trump was naming me, he went into Trump's office and said, "You can't do this," and made the argument against me in front of me.
In front of you?
Oh, yeah.
And what was the argument?
I'm immoral, I'm a bad person.
And you're sitting there.
Oh, yeah. And said that, you know, it should have never been prosecuted. It wasn't a crime. It was something that should have been handled by the rabbis.
Oh,
because it was a family dispute. And I just sat there and didn't say anything. And finally, Trump looked at me and said, "Are you going to say anything to defend yourself?" I said, "No." I said, "I want to defend myself to him."
Yeah.
Doing my job. And by the way, I looked at him and said, "By the way, your father pled guilty to all 18 counts."
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Look, there's some credit to Trump in this that he said, "All right, fine, you know, get out of here, Jared."
Anyway.
Yeah.
He named me anyway, but then of course he fired me.
Yeah.
Because Jared just continued to pound me.
But that was Jared, you think, that
I
precipitated that firing?
Oh, I know it was Jared.
Okay.
Because both Donald Trump and Steve Bannon told me it was Jared.
Yep, it was Jared who did the, do I have to say it? Pounded Chris Christie while Trump watched and was like, "Are you gonna take this pounding?" That's the fetish. It's gotta be, right? Anywho, sad story, Chris. Maybe you shouldn't have supported an obvious criminal in the first place. Anyway, this was the deal Kushner seemed to have with Trump. The little fellow would get to use his position to benefit his personal business, and in exchange, Jared would serve Trump as a, I want to say goon? Not sure how else to describe it. He gooned for Trump. For example, Jared attempted to set up back-channel communications between then soon-to-be National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and the Kremlin, like a goon would. He even suggested using Russian communication systems in the Russian embassy to avoid monitoring from US intelligence agencies. You know how when you're doing really above-the-board stuff, you want to make sure no one's watching except it's okay if Russia's watching? I have to repeat this. Jared Kushner, while working for the president, wanted to use Russia's communication systems to set up deals, presumably because he didn't want it on the books. That's like if a cop was like, "Well, no need to write a ticket. You can just pay me in cash." It's obviously corrupt in a way that used to get someone in trouble. And he's done this more than once. Remember the Trump Tower meeting back in 2016 when he and a bunch of other goons met with a Russian operative to get dirt on Trump's political opponent? Gosh, gee golly gosh, Trump sure seems to be close with Russia, huh? So yeah. In exchange for being one of Trump's potential fall guys, his buffer for illegal activities, Jared was given a huge amount of power over the United States government while also side hustling for his Kushner companies. That's the deal. You shovel his shit and he'll let you into the vault to take whatever you need. And while this started as normal ghoul stuff between Jared and corporations inside the United States, it got especially sinister when the Kush was put in charge of the Middle East for some reason. In 2017, Kushner advised Trump to fully back a Saudi blockade against Qatar, alleging that Qatar was financially supporting terrorist networks. It should be noted that at this time, multiple officials were confused and frustrated that this fancy boy was being given such a lofty position. And for good reason, because it just so happened that, all the way back in just a few weeks before the blockade, Charles Kushner had met with the Qatari finance minister asking for money to bail out his failing New York property, and the Qatari official declined to help. And then a few weeks later, Jared Kushner suggested to the president that they support a blockade of that country. Sounds kind of like a punishment. Seems like the pressure worked because in the following year, the Kushners would get their funding through a company that happened to be co-owned by the Qatari government. Double. Also, as an aside, that property was at 666 Fifth Avenue in New York, which is like, bad writing, reality. It's too on the nose. Maybe tweak that in the second draft, you know? Please let there be a second draft. I have a lot of notes. So in short, Kushner made it pretty known that he took bribes. International bribes. He was a man in one of the highest positions of power in the United States who was given security clearance, which he got by omitting his foreign connections, and he clearly took bribes. And other countries noticed that. Like Israel. He has a few ties to Israel, besides that obvious one where Bibi crashed in his race car bed. The Kushner companies got $30 million from an Israeli firm right before Trump was visiting the country. He also took out loans from Israel's largest bank, which was a subject in a U.S. criminal investigation at the time. There's also, of course, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who I guess is pals with Kushner. It's probably fine. This led to Kushner having a hand in Trump's investment in arms deals with the Saudis, which was part of this ploy for Saudi Arabia to pour their money into U.S. companies and infrastructure, as the U.S. would in turn provide arms deals and pledge to help them in diplomacy in the Middle East. Which I guess that's technically in the interest of the United States, like, if you squint. But also, something kind of happened involving the Saudi government around that time.
The United Nations has just issued its report on the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. The Saudi journalist was killed in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October last year. The CIA and some Western countries believe Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, ordered the killing.
Right. They killed a guy brutally. And allegedly, do we have to say allegedly? Whatever we have to say is fine. Please just don't kill me too. Like, you absolutely killed Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. And Kushner was so tight with the Saudi throne that he had a private conversation with the Crown Prince just days before the Saudis acknowledged this murder. At the time, Jay Kush was trying to paint Mohammed bin Salman as a reformer that would ultimately bring modernity and peace to the entire Middle East region, while also promoting the Crown Prince's cover story that Khashoggi was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood that senior Trump officials would be happy to see gone. Because they were buds. Buds cover for other buds' murders, especially when one of the buds gives the other bud a crap load of money. So this was how Jared Kushner created peace in the Middle East, mainly through a series of bribes that favored one group while throwing another group under the bus. For example, supporting Morocco's claim over the Western Sahara, which went against the long-standing position of the UN. We just sort of dropped international policy, like removing Sudan's state sponsor of terrorism designation, almost exclusively in exchange for these countries having a better relationship with Israel. It's pretty ironic for the United States to call anyone a terrorist, but anyway, the point is they were bribes, and bribes that sort of don't solve anything in the long run. And while we were doing this, Jared Kushner quietly filled his pockets by making business deals with these same countries with which he was doing diplomacy, because that was his true goal. To network. He was a networker. Dude isn't much to look at. He has the personality of a horse skeleton. And in fact, it's been reported that his investment firm didn't even present themselves professionally. Their pitch deck was, apparently, just 20 black and white slides filled with hollow buzzwords. Because it didn't matter, right? What mattered was the obvious connections he had. gained through this flaunted conflict of interest. He used his position to form business relationships in the Middle East, and if those relationships happened to create some diplomacy along the way, neat. And it paid off for Kush. A few months after Trump's first term, Jared's pal, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, invested $2 billion into Kushner's Affinity Partners asset management company. And while everyone questioned all these shady dealings at first, over time, we sort of got used to Jared just being there, scamming. And we had other things going on. After all, COVID, right? Whew. That was a whole thing. And then Trump left the office, messily, sure, but I guess it's over now, right? It's 2021, Trump is gone, that movie Infinite is coming out, America was on top of the world again. Water under the bridge, a hatchet buried. Yes, that's what they say. Oh, but oops, we reelected the criminal for some reason. Why did we do that again? Were we drinking a lot or something? I can't recall. Someone tell me why we did that again. No one's gonna, okay. Well, we did, and the Kush was loose once more, except he learned a very important lesson from that first Trump term. People find him unsettling. Jared has all the charisma of a haunted totem, and so he has now stayed out of the spotlight. Not to mention that he perhaps realized that everyone in Trump's direct orbit doesn't really have a successful career. His supporters wanted to hang his number two. It's almost a sign of Trump's affection for Jared that he is allowed to quietly hang back for the sequel. Not to mention that he was now rich and connected enough to not really need Trump's help. Specifically, he's rich thanks to other countries. That's sort of the main goal of Kushner's during the second term, being an economic investment corridor and go-between for Israel and the Gulf states. Kushner acts like a straw for Israel to suck money from countries like Saudi Arabia to themselves. But while Kushner sucks that money, he also leeches transaction fees, and since 2021 has suck-earned over $100 million from this grift. Like, I guess that's fine if you're a money ghoul, except very important, he's also still working for the United States government. Or rather, he's still volunteering for the US government as peace envoy for the Middle East. Hey, how's that going? Is it going good over there?
And let me say this, because I forgot this small little detail. In that first meeting, both the Iranian negotiators said to us directly, with no shame, that they controlled 460 kilograms of 60%, and they're aware that that could make 11 nuclear bombs, and that was the beginning of their negotiating stance. So they were proud of it. They were proud that they had evaded all sorts of oversight protocols to get to a place where they could deliver 11 nuclear bombs.
That there is Steve Witkoff, a real estate mogul, and I guess also a special envoy to the Middle East. Despite having zero background in diplomacy, just like Jared has zero background in diplomacy. Unless you count the Ukraine peace plan, which you shouldn't, because it didn't work. Perhaps because, and this is real life, Jared and Steve reportedly just copied most of their 28-point peace plan off a document from the Kremlin, which I'm guessing Ukraine wasn't too keen on. They just copied their pals' homework. Two inept money sacks groping their way through international diplomacy. Although Witkoff does have business ties in the Middle East. Interesting. Anyway, he and Kush super failed to negotiate the nuclear deal, as you might have figured out already. With your eyes, if you read. That clip was of Witkoff a few days after this new war started, trying to claim that Iran super totally had nukes and rubbed it in their faces. Except, that doesn't seem like the case after all. It does not appear like Iran was ready to start World War III, and in fact, they were willing to make concessions that even Obama didn't get. This is according to Badr bin Hamad al-Busaidi, one of the mediators in these talks, who right after negotiations rushed to Washington in order to essentially tell on Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. This guy, along with other experts who were present, have claimed that Iran was not an imminent threat and a peace deal was very possible, and that Witkoff and Kushner had no idea what they were doing and seemed to misunderstand the basic proposals Iran was making. They basically got confused and were like, "You guys aren't serious about peace," and left. Because that's what happens when you send two dudes with zero experience to negotiate a fucking international nuclear deal. Or perhaps they didn't want these negotiations to work. Perhaps these two businessmen with ties to the Middle East, including Israel, were more than happy to let this fall apart and sell Trump on a war, even though that would tank Trump's administration and, start a war. Like, Trump would have loved to stick it in the Democrats' faces that he did the peace even better than Obama, right? I'm speculating here, but Trump is not looking great. He's got a lot of King Theoden Thrall energy, And then there's Jared whispering in his ear, while the serious people around him are sort of nervously looking at their feet. And what's especially concerning is that Jared's interest in the Middle East really doesn't seem like it's in the interest of helping Trump. Obviously it isn't in the interest of the United States, but you'd think he'd at least be trying to do favors for his father-in-law. And that brings up a very interesting question about what Jared Kushner has become. A question we will ask after the second ad break. Yummy, yummy, ooh, gooey ads, rub them on you.
These days, anytime something costs only $15, people ask, what's the catch? And I get it. With prices out there the way they are in this economy, with inflation and what have you, and with all the tariffs and whatnot, with the sticker shock we all feel, with all the world's chaos, with every new news story, it probably feels like nothing is going to cost $15 anymore. But guess what? Incorrecto mundo, my friends, because Mint Mobile has unlimited talk, text, and data, fast, reliable coverage on the nation's largest 5G network, and an award-winning care team for only $15 a month. There's no catch. You can even bring your current phone and your phone number and choose from 3, 6, or 12-month plans. I know what you're thinking. I know. $15 in 2026 in this economy with things, costing a lot and prices going up and things that used to cost low now cost high with prices on the rise and the money go away in this economy. Really? Really? And the answer is yes. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/more news. That's mintmobile.com/more news. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/more news. That's it, folks. There is no catch. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. In this economy? Wow! Wowee!
What's landing on Pluto TV this month? Figuratively, I'll tell you what, your all-time favorite summer blockbusters streaming for free, just how you like them. Movies like Mean Girls, Men in Black, School of Rock, Your Zeus is Cooked, Mighty Afro Chai Tea, Hey Bro, Check Demeter, Are the Miscellaneous Pastries done yet? 21 Jump Street, Athena, Goddess of War, and Craftsmanship or something. It's the Persephones, Pluton TV, both Anchorman movies, a ton of Transformers hits, Gaia Pierce, Herodotus We Hardly Knew Yes, the Eros Tour, Tartarus Control. We're gonna keep doing this bit around Uranus. Eurybia, no you are. You hit me in the Nereids, live at the Lyric Hyperion. Love your Cachias, and so much more. It's summer, so watch movies, freestyle, Pluto TV, stream now, pay never. Oh wow, hello, hi, aloha, welcome back. We were talking about Jared, special peace envoy, going around the world representing America like a spokesperson, like Jared from Subway, except less likable. B the B, which is how I say before the break, we mentioned that Jared and rich guy Steve Witkoff seemed to tank the peace talks with Iran, either through sheer stupidity or maybe a second thing, and how that not only undermined the United States, but also Trump specifically. I mentioned how, over time, we sort of just stopped talking about Kushner and the obvious conflicts of interest that come up when someone representing the United States in the Middle East also has a bunch of business ties there. And it actually brings up an interesting question about what Jared Kushner is. A human, I guess. Maybe, we'll put a pin in that. But what do you call someone who works for the United States government but seems to secretly serve a different country? Well, in the opinion of one of the diplomats who was present during these negotiations, quote, "We regarded Witkoff and Kushner as Israeli assets that dragged a president into a war he wants to get out of." Interesting point. One might even call it a good and accurate point. After all, both Netanyahu and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia wanted the United States to go to war with Iran. And it just so happens that Kushner and Witkoff are pretty tight with those places. And by tight, I mean that literally as the Israel-Hamas negotiations were happening, Israel approved a deal where Affinity Partners, Kushner's investment firm, purchased 10% of a financing company called Phoenix Financial Limited, a company directly involved in the Israeli expansion into the Palestinian territory. Affinity was now the largest shareholder of that company, which means that Jared Kushner was very obviously financially incentivized to tank these peace talks, even if it meant hurting the United States and Trump. So, am I saying that he's purposefully undermining the United States for some secret ideological belief? No. Unless you count getting rich as an ideology. It's kind of a lofty accusation to say that Jared Kushner is a foreign asset, so I should make it clear that he probably doesn't think of himself as betraying America, but rather this is exactly why everyone was so concerned about these conflicts of interest in the first place. It doesn't matter if the person swears they won't get corrupted, it'll just naturally happen, especially to people who are, corrupt. It actually brings me all the way back to 2016, when people were saying that Trump, a very volatile and emotional man, would of course start a war if he was president. And that concern was framed around his temper and or incompetence. Like he'd get in a fight with the president of France and nuke him at 3 a.m. And yeah, he started a war and did a lot of other stuff. He does tweet at 3 a.m. a lot, but something has always pinged me about this concern. Their defense was always that, because they have business ties, they would be better suited for negotiating peace. Here's Kushner recently saying just that.
What people call conflicts of interest, Steve and I call experience and trusted relationships that we have throughout the world.
Thing is, he's kinda right, but that's not a good thing. Because Trump, like Kushner, had so many business ties to other countries, the larger concern isn't that he'd start a conflict, but avoid one. Everyone wants peace, right? Except cats. But what we need to realize is that not everyone has the same definition of that word. For example, for Jared Kushner and Trump, peace can be easily achieved by simply looking the other way. If, for example, a certain country is doing a genocide, actual peace would only be achieved by stopping that from happening. It's not peace if you, say, simply bribed everyone to ignore that genocide, because the people doing the genocide are your business partners and childhood pal. Netanyahu slept in Kushner's bed. Doesn't seem like you should be in charge of brokering a ceasefire with Israel and Hamas when one of those two sides slept in your childhood bed. Doesn't seem like he cares about the interest and well-being of the people in Gaza when Kushner is also having wet dreams about redeveloping that area and making a ton of money, with the clear intention of pushing out the Palestinian people in the process. This is how Kushner thinks of peace. He wants to tie Trump and himself financially to other countries and call that a truce, because in theory, that gives these countries the incentive to make the United States happy, so long as Trump is in power. And Jared gets rich too. It's a fun little bonus for him. But then we also have to make that country happy, right? For example, earlier this year, Pakistan's finance ministry signed a deal with Trump and Witkoff's World Liberty Financial crypto company. Oh, and Witkoff made a real estate deal on behalf of the US with Pakistan to develop a Manhattan high-rise, not unlike Kushner's Fifth Avenue fix with Qatar. Does that really strengthen our relationship with Pakistan? Or does it simply strengthen Trump's relationship with them? What if we have to get into a major conflict with that country? It's not actually Jared Kushner's problem. He is, after all, just like a volunteer, remember? We don't actually pay him. And in fact, and this is true, as of 2024, 99% of the investment money Jared Kushner gets rich from comes from other countries, specifically Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Israel. He simply doesn't work for us. So it is hard not to conclude that Jared Kushner is a foreign asset who won't think twice about betraying the United States if he thinks it'll help him, even if he doesn't mean to be that. And I don't know, man. It's like, it's not good. We gotta get him out of there, right? Maybe get people to look into the things he's done. Like, you know what? Okay, so hear me out. So what if we look at what the rules are, and we hire people to see if Jared Kushner was breaking those rules. And then we do some kind of procedure where we have people say the rules that he broke, and we can let him explain himself at the procedure too. And then, if he did break those rules, we create some kind of consequence, like a timeout or something. Yeah, write that all down. I might be onto something unless we end up weaponizing that system against minorities and drug offenders. I'm just kind of worried that after the dust clears, Jared Kushner will just exist, consequence-free. He'll probably go hide on that island he's trying to buy, like a real Epstein, you know? He's easy to forget about, and that's by design. He grew up with this 80s crime dad and watched him get caught, and then he glommed onto this other 80s crime dad. And Kushner is kind of doing the same playbook as Trump, with one important distinction. See, you have to wonder what kind of idiot would become the president to do scams when that position is so visible. Like, what a bad plan. Someone like that must be playing some kind of 4D chess. Otherwise, he'd be really stupid. Even if he gets away with all of it somehow. It's really stupid. I don't know if Trump will ever face consequences beyond being historically regarded as a fart president, but I do know that he's a very convenient distraction if you're some other guy in his orbit who wants to quietly plunder the government. Like how I always get Katy drunk and bring her to Best Buy when I want to steal Blu-rays. Trump is the ultimate diversion for a heist. And it's extremely ironic that Jared Kushner is kind of doing the exact thing Trump wants to do, but can't quite. I mean, who knows? Maybe that is the 4D chess. Maybe he and Trump will strut into the same car and drive off at the end. Also, Trump's idiot biological sons are obviously doing scams, and Trump has his crypto and other scams, and we've done many episodes about all the scams and deals Trump is benefiting from. Also, I don't care ultimately. Dude sucks. Is the point. He should be arrested, although if you cuff him, he might just turn into pink mist and float away, like one of Magneto's weirder henchmen. You know, the ones that don't quite have cool powers beyond just being a little, like, gross? Like the hug monster from X3. Be careful, don't hug him! Or like Toad. What was Toad's deal? Why does he have, like, he's like the exact powers of a Toad? Wolverine isn't literally a Wolverine. Why is Toad a Toad? Down to the green skin. Is that a coincidence? Is the green skin a coincidence? All right, get out of here. It's fine. We're not going to solve Toad in this episode. Though now I want to watch that movie. Wonder if Katy wants to go to Best Buy. Katy, hey, you feeling boozy? It's almost noon. Well, that was that, and this is this. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Patreon.com/some more news. Podcast Even More News is the title. Twice a week. Here or podcast listen spaces. This show podcast, if prefer. To seeing. Merch available. Buy or just look. The end. Here's some news. I just said the end.